Right now, EpicSeven is balanced around just one thing, its defense break. And you may be asking yourself, is this a problem? But let me explain. The game is currently balanced around defense break for two reasons, mitigation and damage. For the sake of these two general terms, let's categorize things first. Damage can include literal raw DPS from a skill like Landy's S3 that doesn't include any debuffs whatsoever, or it could also include damage from something like a debuff, like with Carrot's skill 3. To make things easier as well, let's just count all debuffs as damage because technically speaking, when you lose turns or when you lose the ability to act, it affects you negatively, which technically affects your overall health. Mitigation, in reverse, acts to prevent things like this from impacting you too greatly, and ultimately that's where things like revives and heals fall under this category since they stop these effects from being too detrimental to your team. Long story short, damage can effectively be categorized as anything that you do to the enemy, whereas mitigation is anything that you would do to stop the enemy from doing it to you. Now, why is this a problem? Well, true debuffers like Dizzy or Silverblade Araminta are simply much weaker than every other character in the game in a variety of content. And why, you may ask? Well, it's because of factors like 15%, the fact that most PvE encounters have some form of immunity to a lot of detrimental or like negative debuffs, and because cleansers or immunity, especially in PvP, are just so strong. And since debuffers, aka one half of the damage conversation, is always at a disadvantage from the get-go, this leaves most good damage dealers to be ones that don't rely on debuffs very much at all. Now on the mitigation side, there are plenty of characters that are very strong. Arrowell, Pillis, Last Rider Crow, Ocean Breeze, Luluka, Destina, all of these characters are very strong and they share a lot of characteristics or qualities amongst each other. They have some form of Aureus, they decrease damage dealt with a specific condition like AoEs and Last Rider Crow, or they just simply heal a lot. And finally, the most important quality that they usually share together is the fact that most of their win conditions have little to no RNG built into it whatsoever. Pressing Destina S3, Pillis S3, Ocean Breeze Luluka S3, none of these really have the condition of needing to land a debuff or having only a 15% chance of healing. None of these things exist. The issue then? Mitigation is always slightly ahead of debuffers at the very minimum, since a wide majority are always capable of applying their mitigation. And to compensate for this, most damage dealers nowadays just need to have built-in defense penetration or find some source of defense penetration in order to compensate. Without it, there really isn't any good way to deal with characters that have defense buff, healing, shields, Aureus, etc. This is where the issue of balancing around defense break begins. Most characters right now are basically unusable unless if they have some form of penetration in their kit or they have evasion, which isn't even really true anymore because of the recent sleep buff. Characters like Navy Captain Landy, Abyssal Euphine, Aiden, and even Strays are partly considered strong just because they have some form of defense penetration built in and therefore do a decent amount of damage. And on the other hand, the value of some debuffers are completely determined on how well they can apply defense break. That isn't necessarily the case for Briar Witch Iceria because she does so much, but pairing the extinction and the defense break on a character like Briar Witch Iceria, and you've got a real menace to EpicSeven. However, with a character like Flan and Famir, while they definitely have their own advantages or their own unique strengths in their kit, one of their objective strengths is just their ability to reduce defense across the board and then allow damage dealers to come in one shot, go wild, etc. Now the thing is that Smilegate is definitely aware of how strong defense break and defense penetration is in general, since a lot of content like Rift has defense penetration immunity, and content like in Ancient Inheritance has bosses that are just immune to defense break. Personally, I don't think the war of mitigation versus damage will ever end because that's how you balance games in general. But in recent patches, I think it's pretty evident that some of the only really good characters or standout characters, especially in PvP, are only good because they have some form of defense penetration or can land defense break in their kit. And again, while I definitely appreciate characters like Biblis or Famir to kind of set wild all of my characters, especially as a cleave player, this kind of game plan of releasing defense penetration or defense breaking characters doesn't really add diversity to EpicSeven. Now again, I totally understand that seeing your entire team explode is not very fun, and especially when you're playing against Cleave, I get that this is not very interactive by any means. But just keep in mind that right now, the only way to deal meaningful damage in a game dominated by Aureus, Holy Sacrifice, and Adamant Shields is to either wait till like Frenzy 5 or Frenzy 6, which I don't really know is a great answer, or it's to penetrate defense. as an aside, just remember that even in the slowest of compositions, the main way that you win with a character like Dark Corvus is from skill 3ing 4 times with a full defense penetration skill 3. Okay, so as you can see, both of us already value the combat readiness pushes and also the ability to use souls. These two things are also very good when you pair them with defense penetration characters. So you do have characters like Green Landy, or you have characters like Aiden and stuff. Well, I guess Aiden's banned here. But you have characters that will either be able to use their soul burns in order to defense penetrate and guarantee do it, like Briar Witch Iseria, who's probably going to be a character that I pick here. Or you can pair them with someone like, I don't know, Emma Ludwig, just because he has built-in defense penetration as well, depending on how many soul burns that you use. Unfortunately, there is an ML Landy, so I am going to have to probably pivot into playing something like ML Ken with Flan, and hope that either Flan can def break, or ML Ken's damage alone is enough to one-shot the entire team. However, generally speaking, I am looking to try and play towards, or I am generally trying to use Flan in order to defense break the or generally speaking, I'm still trying to use Flan to defense break the whole team and then just annihilate or just one-shot everything with the defense break. Or otherwise, I'm just trying to use ML Ken with his AoE S3 to one-shot everything and be in a good spot. Okay, so you can already tell that the person I'm fighting against is already kind of aware of what kind of win con my team composition has. He picks Christy here, presumably because he doesn't want to get defense broken by the Flan, which is, you know, likely coming in like the next couple picks. But generally speaking, people that play against cleave or are aware that you're playing against cleave, they're going to pick a bunch of characters that have immunity because they don't want to be defense broken, or they're going to pick characters that are very, very bulky and tanky or have anti-crit, something like that in between, just so that they don't get one shot by characters that already have built-in penetration. Okay, so once again, there's another Rimuru, which is kind of annoying. I'm not a huge fan of like all this Rimuru spam, but I'm also curious now if it might just be better for me to have my Green Landy. I think Green Landy could work here. I'm going to pick Green Landy here, and I think Green Landy should actually end up getting banned. I think I'm going to ban Christy. Okay, or he could just not care about anything that I do. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so none of these units are actually on... none of these units have immunities, which again, normally, like, you would be very, very distraught, or you wouldn't be feeling very good if you saw what was happening on this team right now, or... Okay, so generally speaking, you would be kind of in a bad spot when you see a team like this. However, because I have defense break from my Flan, and presumably I have ML Ken that should cut ahead of my ML Landy, or we have ML Ken who should cut ahead of my Landy, this should just... Okay, well, we have literally no defense breaks. Huh. Okay, well... if I had defense breaks here, we would be in a match. Okay, so if we did have defense breaks here, we would be in a better spot. However, beggars can't be choosers. Hopefully we oh my god, they're all stealth. Hopefully we end up one-shotting here with the ML Ken S3. I don't know if we're actually going to be able to one-shot it though, because everyone is stealth. Oh boy, and please don't proc. If he S3s my Rimuru, or if he S3s my ML Ken, if he crits, I heal, right? And of course he doesn't. Interesting. Huh. I do think I should be fine. I should cut here. Actually, the entire team is defense broken now, so since I have Soulburn now, maybe I can one-shot his team? Is the game just over? Did they all get one shot? Maybe ML Ken was just... ML Ken also has the defense break in his kit, so that might have just been enough to one shot. Okay. Maybe it was. Okay. So this kind of worked out for the best. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Wow, how to make the best out of a really bad situation. Okay, I almost won. I almost lost that game. But you kind of get it, but you kind of get it. Landy already has defense break, or she already had the defense break that she was hitting into, and she had defense pen built into her kit. Kind of a no-brainer. Defense pen is really strong. You need it to kind of get through a lot of these characters. That was a tank Rimuru and Arrowell and a very tanky team in general, but we ended up managing to take a dub. So at the end of it all, I just hope that Smilegate doesn't rely too heavily on defense penetration to make a character good, but I know that based off of what we've seen so far, Debuffers will always feel frustrating to play, and I don't think they're ever getting rid of 15% anytime soon. And therefore, we will inevitably probably have to rely on concepts like built-in defense penetration, ignore Aureus on hit, or the really bad feeling defense break and have to fight against the high effect resistance characters and the other never-ending war of effectiveness versus effect resistance. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to kind of voice my thoughts because this is, I think, now the second character that we've received more recently that they kind of just slapped defense break onto, and they kind of try to stop you from getting countered. And in terms of like dealing damage to a team that is very tanky, if you don't have defense break, you're not really usable. Broen was given a defense break, Famir was given a defense break, Biblis has a defense break. Every character basically has a defense break, or they have some form of defense penetration. I mean, Ludwig even has defense penetration in his kit. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed or learned something. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, subscribe. Let me know what you think of this concept. If you feel like the game is really dominated by this, or maybe you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. But anyways, guys, make sure to check out the rest of my platforms. Thank you so much. I am now streaming, as always, on YouTube and Twitch at the same time. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Adios.